Ladies and gentlemen, let's stop pretending. We're adults. We know that the act of physical intimacy isn't just about pleasure. It's about connection, memory, and energy. So when we say, fuck her like she'll never forget you, what we're really saying is, touch her life in such a deep before anything physical happens. Before a single kiss, a single touch, or even a brush of your fingers across her skin, the real seduction begins in the mind. If you want her to remember you long after you've gone, you have to understand that the body responds to what the mind believes. You can't touch her soul through her body unless you've already touched her mind in ways that make her feel seen, desired, and deeply understood. Women don't just crave physical connection, they crave emotional safety, mental stimulation, and spiritual resonance. That's where the real intimacy begins, and that's what makes someone unforgettable. Every time you speak to her, you're either getting closer or pulling away. It's in your energy, your focus, your attention. Are you distracted when she speaks, only waiting for your turn to talk? Or are you fully immersed in her voice, her words, her emotions? Women notice the little things, the way you look at them when they're speaking, the questions you ask that go beyond the surface, the way you remember the details she didn't think you were listening to. That is how you begin to stir her emotionally. That is where the seed of unforgettable intimacy is planted. Make her feel that when she talks, she's the only one in the room, that her ideas matter, that her story isn't just something you're tolerating to get closer to her physically, it's something you're actually drawn into. That emotional attentiveness is rare, and that rarity makes it powerful. You see, physical touch alone can be duplicated, but the way you make someone feel when they open up to you cannot. Emotional safety is rare, and once she experiences it with you, you've already started to become someone she won't forget. Get curious about her, not just what turns her on physically, but what excites her spirit, what drives her, what scares her, what dreams keep her awake at night. Go beyond compliments about her appearance and dive into the layers that most people ignore. Say things that show depth. Ask questions that reveal character. This is how you build not only emotional connection, but anticipation, because the mind fuels desire, and when a woman feels that you've already entered her mind with genuine interest, the physical connection becomes electrified. When you know how to speak to her soul, you don't need to try hard to impress her. You don't need to perform or pretend. You simply allow space for her to be fully herself, and in that space she opens up willingly, not out of obligation, but out of comfort. And that opening, that deep willingness to share herself emotionally, creates the kind of vulnerability that makes the physical act not just unforgettable, but sacred. When she feels emotionally safe, her walls fall. Her body responds in ways that have nothing to do with technique and everything to do with trust. Her laughter becomes more honest. Her touch becomes more generous. Her body relaxes and invites you in because it knows it's not just being touched, it's being understood. And once you've touched her mind and shown her that her emotions are welcome, her body will give itself to you in ways that are not just sensual, but spiritual. This is when intimacy becomes something she will replay in her mind long after it's over, not because of what you did, but because of how you made her feel. Because every moment was rooted in intentional presence. Because you gave her the space to be soft, to be free, and to be deeply felt. And that feeling is something she will never forget. Most people think passion is created through physical touch, through intensity, or through techniques learned from the internet. But the truth is, a woman's deepest, most uninhibited energy only comes out when she feels like she's in an environment where nothing about her needs to be filtered, where her softness is not seen as weakness, and her fire is not seen as too much. If you want her to give herself to you in a way that's unforgettable, if you want her to let go of control and drop her guard completely, then you need to give her more than desire. You need to give her emotional safety. Not just in words, not just in gestures, but in your presence, in the way you see her, in the way you respond to her energy without trying to mold it into what suits you best. Because the truth is, most women live in a world that constantly tells them to be less, to be quiet, to be polite, to be acceptable. And when she finds someone who gives her permission to be everything, loud, messy, raw, soft, intense, without trying to shrink her or fix her, she will remember that energy for the rest of her life. A woman's wildness, her sensuality, her ability to fully express herself in the bedroom and beyond doesn't come from lust. It comes from feeling emotionally unchained, like she can breathe fully around you, like nothing she does in that moment will lead to shame, rejection, or emotional distance afterward. If she moans too loud, will you think she's too much? If she wants to take control, will you feel threatened? If she cries in the middle of it all, will you hold her or shut down? These are the questions she asks silently, deep inside her mind. And she'll never say them out loud, but her body will answer them in the way it responds to you. If you give her judgment, her body will tense. If you give her pressure, her desire will hide. But if you give her freedom, her true feminine energy will flood the space with a level of vulnerability, chaos, passion, and softness that no physical technique alone could ever unlock. She needs to know that in your arms, she doesn't have to perform, that her stretch marks, her scars, her insecurities, her fears, none of those things will be turned against her. That she can whisper her fantasies to you without you laughing or losing respect for her, that she can fall apart and still be seen as whole. And when she feels that kind of safety with you, she will offer parts of herself no one else has seen, not because you demanded them, but because your energy made her feel like nothing needed to be hidden. That kind of intimacy is rare, and it cannot be faked. It's built in the way you speak to her outside the bedroom, in how you handle her emotions when she's vulnerable, in how you respect her boundaries and don't make her feel guilty for saying no. Being unforgettable to a woman isn't about being aggressive or dominant or even sexually skilled. It's about creating a space where she feels so safe, so seen, so emotionally naked, that physical nakedness becomes a form of expression, not exposure. Where she doesn't just give you her body because you turned her on, but because you touched a place in her that said, with you, I can be everything. When a woman trusts you enough to let her walls down completely, she doesn't just let you in physically, she lets you into her essence. And when you've been inside a woman's essence, when you've met her there, at that place beyond performance, beyond lust, beyond expectations, that's when you become the one she never forgets, not because of the pleasure, but because of the peace, the safety, the emotional fire that allowed her to truly let go without apology, without fear, without And in that release, she finds something she didn't even know she needed until you gave it to her, without demanding anything in return. Foreplay doesn't begin when the lights go off or when the clothes come off. It starts long before the bedroom is even a thought. It begins in the way you speak to her throughout the day, in the subtle glances, in the energy you send her through your tone, through your touch, even through your silence. It's in the anticipation you build with intention, with patience, with the understanding that the deepest desire is born not in the act itself, but in the wait, in the tension, in the moments that whisper, I see you, I want you, and I'm not rushing a single second of this connection. A woman's arousal isn't a switch that flips when you're ready. It's a fire that builds with time, with emotional presence, with attention to detail, and with the ability to create a slow burn that consumes her mind before it ever touches her body. It's in the way you send a message, not to ask for something, but just to say you're thinking about her. The way you hold eye contact a little longer when she's speaking. The way you compliment something unexpected. Like the way her voice changes when she gets passionate, or how her mind moves when she's trying to solve a problem. It's the way you notice the little things, the invisible things, the things no one else pays attention to. That's where the anticipation grows. Because when a woman feels deeply seen and slowly seduced in her everyday existence, her body begins to crave without even realizing why. She starts to associate your presence with warmth, with electricity, with curiosity, and by the time you touch her, she's already halfway open, because you've spent the entire day reminding her that she's desired, not just for her body, but for her essence. Physical touch becomes powerful when it's preceded by emotional intention. Every glance, every hand that brushes across her lower back, every moment you lean in close, without needing to take more, tells her that you're not here just for a quick fix. You're here to explore, to savor, to appreciate. Women are intuitive creatures. They sense when a man is rushing, when he's performing, when he's trying to arrive somewhere fast. But when you slow down, when you treat her like an experience instead of a destination, something inside her relaxes. Something opens up that isn't fueled by adrenaline, but by trust, by safety, by the kind of emotional stimulation that says, this isn't going to be rushed, this is going to be felt. And in that feeling, she begins to let go of control, to lean into the moment, to match your energy with her own unique rhythm. It's not about teasing for the sake of teasing, it's about building a story, one that draws her in piece by piece. The way you let your lips hover near hers without kissing. The way you run your fingers along the edge of her waist, not grabbing, not groping, just exploring, like you're learning a language you want to speak fluently. The way you whisper something that's more suggestion than statement, more question than command. When you move like you're not in a hurry to conquer, but to discover, her body becomes an open invitation, not because you asked for it, but because you earned it, with patience, with presence, with the kind of slow energy that makes her feel like she's being worshipped, not just touched. The most unforgettable intimacy lives in those in-between moments, those silent spaces where time slows down, where you're not counting how close you are to the finish, but how deep you can go into the experience. When you stop chasing the peak and start cherishing the climb, when you understand that every breath she takes in your arms is part of a build-up that doesn't need to be rushed, that's when you begin to make her feel like she's the center of the world, like no one has ever taken the time to truly see her like this, touch her like this, wait for her like this. And that kind of presence becomes a memory she never lets go of, a fire she never stops craving, a story she never forgets. Because it wasn't about how fast you got there, it was about how completely you made her feel along the way. When it comes to truly unforgettable intimacy, too many people focus on their own wants, their own desires, their own timing, and forget that real connection isn't one-sided. It's a rhythm, a dance, a language shared between two energies, not forced by one and followed by the other, but discovered together in a space where both feel free to express and respond. A woman doesn't want to feel like she's being acted upon, like she's just the receiver of someone else's hunger. She wants to feel like her body is a part of something shared, something sacred, something that grows naturally between two people who are in sync with each other's energy. To be unforgettable, you have to tune in. You have to observe, feel, and adjust to her rhythm, not just physically, but emotionally and energetically. When you touch her, it can't be a routine you've memorized from past experiences, because every woman is different, every moment is different, and if you're not paying attention, if you're not reading her breath, her eyes, the tension in her shoulders, the shift in her hips, then you're not with her. You're just going through motions. And women know the difference. They can feel when you're present, and they can feel when you're performing. Presence creates intimacy, and performance creates pressure. If you're truly present, You'll know when to slow down, when to back off, when to hold her tighter, when to let her lead, when to stay still, when to whisper something soft instead of moaning something loud. It's in the little shifts, the subtle cues, the moments where she arches toward you just slightly, where her breathing changes, where her fingers clutch just a little harder. That's where her rhythm is speaking to you, not in words, but in the language of feeling, of movement, of surrender. If you listen with your body and not just your ears, you'll start to recognize what brings her closer to her own pleasure, what makes her melt, what makes her rise. And when you follow that rhythm, not trying to control it, not trying to outpace it, you become the man who dances with her in ways she didn't even know she was capable of experiencing. Because you're not there just to take, you're there to co-create, to receive just as much as you give. Sometimes the rhythm asks you to be slow, to drag your lips across her neck like time itself is melting. Sometimes it demands hunger, fierceness, the kind of passionate intensity that makes her lose herself in the moment. But you don't decide that alone. You feel it with her. You match her mood, her breath, her body language, and you build something that feels organic, like music flowing without a script. This is what makes her body trust you. This is what makes her want more of you without even knowing why. Because she's not just being touched, she's being understood. And understanding breeds intimacy far deeper than technique ever will. Let her take control when she wants to. Let her flip the script, surprise you, guide you. And when you sense she's ready to give the control back, receive it without ego, without turning it into a power play, that back and forth, that natural give and take, is what makes the experience feel alive, feel real, feel unforgettable. When you make space for her rhythm to exist equally with yours, when you stop trying to prove anything and start letting the moment guide you both, that's when you cross the line from just another encounter to something she'll carry in her bones, in her memory, in the way she smiles when your name comes up even years later, not because of what you did to her, but because of what you created with her, side by side, breath by breath, beat by beat, without force, without pressure, just the unspoken magic of two people completely in tune with each other's energy. After everything, the emotional connection, the slow anticipation, the shared rhythm. What leaves the deepest mark isn't just how you made her feel in the moment, but how you made her feel after it was all over. So many people get caught up in the build-up and the climax. They forget that the most powerful imprint comes in the moments after the intensity fades, in the silence, in the stillness, in the space where vulnerability lingers and walls remain low. If you truly want to be unforgettable to her, understand this: how you hold her afterward, how you speak to her when her guard is down, how you stay when most would get up and walk away. That's where your presence becomes permanent. Because real intimacy doesn't end when the heat does. It transforms, it deepens. It becomes a space where she can finally exhale knowing that your touch wasn't conditional, that your presence wasn't performative, and that her openness didn't lead to abandonment or emotional distance. When you stay, when you wrap your arms around her and let her melt into your chest, when you don't rush to leave or distract yourself, she feels safe in a way that's rare, in a way that tells her she can be as soft and raw as she needs to be without consequence. That post-intimacy presence is where the soul connection is formed. It's where trust becomes real. It's where she realizes that being with you wasn't just about desire, it was about being accepted in her entirety, without having to earn it, without having to perform for it. So many women are used to disappearing energy after the physical is done, used to the shift in tone, the change in behavior, the emotional distance that creeps in once the passion fades. But when you stay the same, calm, warm, attentive, when you treat her like she still matters, even after everything, that's when you become something different in her mind. Speak gently to her in those moments, not because you're trying to impress her, but because you understand the power of your words when her heart is open. Tell her what you admired about her, what you felt, what stood out to you, not in a way that flatters, but in a way that reflects presence. Let her know she was more than enough, that every part of her was seen, that her pleasure mattered, that her body was safe with you. This isn't about saying the right lines or sounding deep. It's about offering emotional security when she's in her most tender state, about holding space for her to feel without judgment, without pressure to immediately return to normal, without fear of being dismissed or minimized. Maybe she wants to talk, maybe she wants silence, maybe she just wants to be held. Read her. Be intuitive. Don't make her emotional state about you or take it personally if she shifts. Just be the steady energy that allows her to be however she is. That's what she'll remember. Not just the intensity of your touch, but the calm of your presence. Not just how high you took her, but how gently you brought her back down. And when she lies there thinking about what just happened, when she processes the depth of what she felt, she'll begin to realize that it wasn't just her body that was moved. It was her entire being. This is the kind of connection that doesn't fade. This is the kind of presence that lingers in the mind and body like a scent she can't quite wash off. Because long after the sheets have cooled, long after the lights have dimmed, long after you've left the room, she will still feel you. Not just in memory, but in the way you made her feel. About a woman doesn't crave perfection, she craves presence. The kind that listens without needing to fix, that touches without needing to impress, that holds space without trying to control. When you stop focusing on performance and start focusing on presence, you step into a completely different energy. One that tells her she can stop overthinking, stop holding back, stop wondering if she's doing too much or not enough. In that space, where presence replaces pressure, she starts to relax into herself. And in doing so, she begins to open up in ways that go beyond the physical. Because real intimacy doesn't live in the perfect stroke or the perfectly timed kiss or some expert technique. It lives in the feeling that someone is fully with you, fully tuned in, fully honoring every moment like it matters. Not rushing, not escaping, not waiting for the ending, but completely absorbed in what is happening right now. Presence means you're not in your head wondering how. It means you're not comparing this moment to any other, not trying to replicate a past experience, not analyzing her reactions with insecurity. It means you're with her, not the version of her you've imagined, not the fantasy you've built up, but the real, breathing, emotional, unpredictable her that exists in this moment. And the moment you meet her there, she senses it. She feels the difference in the way you breathe with her, in the way your hands pause to feel instead of to move, in the way your eyes search hers, not for approval, but for truth. Presence is what allows you to move with intention, to speak with depth, to respond instead of react. And that level of emotional maturity creates a container that allows her to surrender, not out of obligation or desire to please, but out of trust that she is fully held, fully seen, fully understood. Too often, people confuse presence with passiveness, as if being still or slow means doing less. But presence is not about doing less. When you kiss her with presence, she doesn't just feel lips on skin, she feels devotion. When you touch her with presence, she doesn't just feel sensation, she feels reverence. And when you listen to her with presence, she doesn't just hear silence, she hears acceptance. This is what makes you unforgettable. Not what you said, not what you did, but how deeply you made her feel through the energy you carried in every word, every touch, every breath. Because presence is rare, and when someone experiences it, they remember it forever, not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it felt real, honest, grounding, like something they've been waiting for without even knowing it. And presence doesn't mean perfection. You can stumble, you can laugh, you can admit nervousness. What matters is that you don't leave the moment. You don't disconnect when things get awkward or uncertain. You stay. You breathe through it. You look her in the eyes and let her see that you're not trying to be flawless. You're trying to be true. That truth, that rawness, is what draws her in deeper. Because she's not looking for someone who knows it all. She's looking for someone who's real. Someone who can be present with her in joy, in vulnerability, in silence, in heat. Someone who can hold all of her without needing to escape or fix or run away when emotions rise or when things don't go perfectly. So when you show up with presence, you become the kind of man whose energy lingers long after the touch fades. You become the one she thinks about when she closes her eyes, not because you did everything right, but because you made her feel like she never had to be anything but herself, fully, completely, unapologetically. And that kind of safety, that kind of connection, that kind of energy doesn't get forgotten. It becomes a standard, a memory, a feeling she quietly compares every other encounter to, not because you impressed her, but because you were truly with her, moment to moment, without distraction, without ego, without needing anything more than what was already there between you.